Boys, what's good? It's Herm. We're here with the first ever WNBA mock draft on the channel. It is just 7 days away. It is a week from today. April 15th is the WNBA draft shortly after the national championship game, which we just had yesterday. And I wanted to do a mock after the tournament because there is so much hype around women's basketball right now, which is awesome. This is a really stacked draft class, especially at the top. And I want to give you who I think should go where, what the picks could be, and just give a glimpse into the WNBA and the talent coming into it. I think it deserves a little more respect, and I think we're going to get that this year. So I'm excited for it, but let's just get into it. Let's not waste any time. Let's talk about the picks. You already know who's at number one. With the first overall pick, the Indiana Fever are going to select point guard Caitlin Clark out of Iowa. The best prospect coming into the WNBA in a long time, maybe ever. She is the NCAA all-time leading scorer, men's or women's, for D1. Dominant player at Iowa, is changing the game, got so many more viewers for the women's game than ever before. Kind of tripled viewership records. She was that impactful, pulling from Curry range all the time. Led the country in scoring and assists. Just a dominant offensive player. Not exactly a transcendent defensive player, but the offense is special and people love watching her play. Out of Iowa, 22 years old, 6 feet flat. Per 36, all the stats are going to be, because that's the way Tankathon does it, and I think it's a good way to get a glimpse at comparing different players who might have played different minutes, whatever. 32.7 points per 36 for Caitlin Clark, a scoring machine. 9 assists as well, and 7.5, nearly 8 rebounds for a player of her stature is also very high level. While I don't think she's a great on-ball defender one-on-one necessarily, she does do a good job of either getting in passing lanes or poking the ball away and getting steals, nearly 2 steals per 36, but the three-point shooting is what's going to change it. 3.9 made threes per game, and that's while being smothered. It's a lot of step backs, it's 30-footers, it's really impressive stuff, and she is going to change the league. She's going to be huge for the teams here. But getting to the Fever, it's her and Aliyah Boston, last year's number 1 overall pick, as well as Kelsey Mitchell in the backcourt she'll be joining, and Alyssa Smith, another young player who's pretty solid. So the Fever could be really good as soon as next season, but the pick and roll with Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston is going to be something to watch. But Clark will go number 1, there's no doubt about it, to the Indiana Fever, staying in the Midwest. And that'll be fun. It'll be a good watch. And in the Great Lakes region for Caitlin Clark, near home, we'll have a ton of fans at all the games, and it's going to be super fun. But let's get into number 2. At number 2, we have center Kamilla Cardoso out of South Carolina. This might be somewhat of a surprising pick, as a lot of people might think it should be Cameron Brink, but after the title win, I'm going to give it to Cardoso because she was so impressive throughout the tournament. 22 and 11 on 10 of 12 shooting against NC State, and then 15 and 17 against Iowa. Was the most outstanding player of the Final Four, was declared as Kamilla Cardoso, and she was dominant in the post. There was nothing they could do, and the height from her is kind of rare. A lot of centers, when you're looking at the WNBA level, are 6'3", 6'4", maybe 6'5", but 6'7" is huge. She looks like a giant out there, and it's just something you don't get very often, a blend of height and skill that Cardoso has. 20.5 points per 36, nearly 14 rebounds, and 3.5 blocks. Is going to be dominant defensively, is going to get a lot of boards, and can be a solid player in the post. I really like her going at number 2. It's either her or Brink, I think, are really the two options here, but I have Cardoso because of how well she played in the tournament. I think that really raised her level and made her kind of the piece here for the Sparks at number 2. At number 3, we have the Chicago Sky on the board here, and I do have them taking Cameron Brink, who can play power forward or center. Coming out of Stanford, has been one of the best players in the country for years. 22 years old, 6'4", 24.5 points per 36, 17 rebounds. Is a rebounding machine. I would say the best rebounder in this draft class, as well as the best shot blocker at 5.3 blocks per game. Is a defensive menace, can get a ton of boards, is rather efficient as well at 51.1% from the field. The Sky had a few people leave in free agency, so getting a player like Brink in here is going to be huge for them. They need it really badly. They just need talent, and Cameron Brink is a very talented player. So getting her in there is potentially the face of your franchise. I like it for Chicago. This is a really talented draft class. In a lot of years, you could see players like Cardoso, Brink, or even the next player we'll talk about go as number 1 overall pick. So I like this selection. I think Brink is going to be a very good player in the W. Then we get into number 4, which is Rickea Jackson, going to the Los Angeles Sparks, a small forward out of Tennessee. I've seen some people mock them Brink and then Cardoso as kind of a big duo, but I gave them a big already in Cardoso, so now let's give them a wing in small forward. Rickea Jackson was kind of shockingly left out of the All-American teams, which she deserved to be on because she was really good at Tennessee. 23 points per game, 9.3 rebounds, really solid rebounder for a forward, as well as just being a really good scorer from a lot of different areas. She's not exactly an elite three-point shooter, and the efficiency across the board isn't fantastic, but the scoring is there, the talent is there, and having her alongside Cardoso I think makes for a much brighter future than you would have expected, because they trade for this 4th overall pick. All of a sudden they have 2 shots in a really good draft, and they get Cardoso and Jackson, and I think that could make a big difference for a team like the Sparks. At number 5, I have the Dallas Wings taking power forward Angel Reese out of LSU. And it could have been Aliyah Edwards out of UConn. That was a player that I considered, but I think the Wings need someone who they at least think can play center, because their projected starting center right now is Tiara McCohen, and I just don't think McCohen is a player that you want as your long-term starting center. They're pretty set at a lot of positions, have some good forwards in Natasha Howard and Seitu Sabally, as well as Arike Ogunbowale out of Notre Dame as their really good player in the backcourt. They could use a second backcourt mate, but I think the biggest need for them is a big, and either you could play Seitu as your center or you could play Angel Reese as your center. She was not the number 1 overall pick, but she went to Oregon with I'm blanking right now, with Sabrina Ionescu, and they were both there at Oregon at the same time. She's a really good player for Dallas, and I think getting a big that can play alongside her, they could both play center for stretches. I like it for Angel Reese, but Angel Reese feels to me like a player who can be more traditionally in the post, fit more of the needs of what a big does, because the biggest concern about Reese's game is whether she can consistently hit at least like a mid-range shot, because her game is very focused on the interior, and if she wants to be a power forward or even a small forward at the pro level, then the shot needs to come further than it is right now. But if you're going to play her as your center, albeit a bit undersized, but the length is there, then I like it as a player who can score on the inside. 21.3 points per game at LSU per 36, 15 rebounds, a dominant rebounding force, and that to me is a big reason why I think she can play center, because she's such a good rebounder. She essentially did play center at LSU, was in the post all the time, gets into passing lanes at 2.2 steals, really solid for a player of her size, and 1.1 blocks per game as well. Just 21, younger than a few of the players we just mentioned. I like getting her at number 5. I've seen people mock her as late as 7, but to me I think 5 is solid value and it's a good fit in Dallas. At number 6, we have Aaliyah Edwards. It's going to be Aaliyah Edwards. To the Washington Mystics, Aaliyah Edwards, power forward out of UConn, 21 years old, as well as Reese is a little bit younger, 6'3", 21 points per 36, 11 rebounds, 2 steals, and 1.2 blocks, as well as being pretty efficient, is a really well-rounded all-around player coming out of UConn. A lot of UConn players are. Gino Auriemma does a good job of kind of filling the holes in players' games, but Aaliyah Edwards was really good. All-American for UConn this season, was kind of the sidekick to Paige Beckers for UConn, but don't get it twisted. Edwards herself is a very good player, is going to be able to defend the positions probably 2 through 5. She's just very versatile, a really athletic defender as well. and I like her in the pick and roll. I think she's going to be a good player, and Washington gets a solid talent here at number 6, who people could argue should be a pick higher, but I like the value here at 6, and they need big play as well. So getting her makes a lot of sense for Washington. At number 7, we have the Minnesota Lynx, and they need a center badly. So maybe you can say I reached a little bit taking Elizabeth Kitley out of Virginia Tech, but I like the pick, and they just need a center badly. Let's look at their center rotation, because it's not great either. Looking at Minnesota's center rotation, their starting center right now is Dorka Juhas, who I just don't think is a great starting center at the WNBA level. They have Nafisa Collier as their power forward. They have Diamond Miller as well in the front court. Kayla McBride and Courtney Williams, I think, is going to be their starting backcourt. So getting a big seems like the most obvious need for a team like Minnesota, and they get one out of Virginia Tech, who's been one of the best players in the country for years now. Was injured for the tournament, didn't get to play for Virginia Tech, which is a bummer, but she's a phenomenal player. 6'6", not quite as big as Cardoso, but as well a very big player coming out of the college scene. 23.9 points per 36, really solid score, as well as a rebounder at about 12 rebounds per game, 2.2 blocks, and also very efficient. She's probably not going to be a star in Minnesota. They have some really good players already, but getting her as a complementary center who can do a bunch of different things on both ends of the floor, I think makes a lot of sense. Rather than taking the best talent available, I think you take the best fit, and I think Kitley's a little underrated because some places don't have her as a first round pick, some places do, but I think she's clearly a first round talent because of how good she was at Virginia Tech for at least a couple of years. But she just was really impressive throughout her time with the Hokies, and I think she deserves to go as high as I have her. At number 8, we have the Chicago Sky, and they're taking point guard Jacy Sheldon out of Ohio State. A lot of people tell you she's the best perimeter defender in this draft class, and I think that's probably true. Led Ohio State to a really good season. They did disappoint in the tournament, losing in the second round, but don't let that fool you. She was really good. Ohio State was really good, and she was the leader of that. 5'10", 23 years old, out of Ohio State, 19 points per 36, a pretty good offensive player as well, despite not being viewed for her offense. 3.4 rebounds, 4 assists, and then 2.1 steals. Is really good as an on-ball defender, not in terms of flash stuff, whether it's steals or blocks, but it also does get steals. Like, that's not her main thing. She's not a flash defender, but she's a very good defender who shuts down opposing offensive players with consistency, and I think Chicago gets a really good value here at 8. I've seen Sheldon mocked as high as number 5. At number 9, we have another point guard, this time going to the Dallas Wings. They got Angel Reese with their first pick. Now let's get a ball handler to kind of pair with her, and now they're taking point guard Isobel Borlase out of the NBL, the WNBL, Australia's Women's Pro League. Just 19 years old, so she's going to develop into a much better player than she is right now. A lot of the players who are getting out of college are 22 or 23, so getting a player as young as Borlase out of Australia, I think presents a ton of value, and you're getting really lucky she's still here at number 9. 18 points per 36, 5.4 rebounds, 2.1 steals. Mind you, this is against grown women, not college players, and she was first team all WNBL in 2024. Like, she was a very, very solid player. Was the 6th woman of the year before, like in 2023, and then was even better in 2024, again earning first team honors. And I think she's going to be a very good WNBA player, and it isn't quite getting the love that she deserves. I saw Tankathon doesn't even have her as a first round pick. ESPN does, which I think is the right call, but Borlase should be a first round pick going here at number 9. Pairing her with Reese gives you 2 really good players moving forward, who I think will make an impact in year 1. At number 10, I have the Connecticut Sun here selecting point guard Dyaisha Fair out of Syracuse. 5 years in college, 3 of them with Buffalo, 2 of them with Syracuse. One of the best New York college players ever. I believe she's 3rd all-time in career scoring. That 5th year helped with that, but did average 22 points for her college career. Is undersized at 5.5. She's doubted, but she's tough and she gets steals. Like, she's not a bad defender. I don't think she'll get aggressively picked on, on, despite being pretty undersized. But 2.3 steals per 36, but more than anything, she's a scorer, 21.4 points per 36, and then kind of decent rebounding, well, especially good rebounding for her size at 5'5". But the assist, she's not necessarily a fantastic playmaker, but getting a score at number 10 of her level, I think it is solid value. Some places have her first round, some don't, but I think a player who did as much as she did in college deserves a little more respect than she's been getting, so I had to have her as a first round pick. Moving into number 11, we have the New York Liberty here, and I have them taking another player out of the WNBL, this time power forward Nyadiew Puoch, again from Australia, 19 years old. The age difference is just so huge for me. It feels kind of unfair that international players can come at 19, but these college players have to stay for the full 4 years essentially. So getting a player who can develop, I think, makes a lot of sense. The New York Liberty, we saw last season, they need more defense. So you could take the player out of UCLA. I'm blanking on her name right now, but there's a good defender coming out of UCLA as well. Let me find it. Just a second. I know this isn't great content here exactly, but I do like the player out of UCLA as well. I'm just blanking on her name, but she projects as a very solid defender. It is Charisma Osborne coming out of UCLA, a shooting guard, would give them defense in the backcourt, 1.8 steals per 36. But I like Puoch because of the age difference. That is the biggest thing for me. 6'3" and can play the power forward, but could also play some small forward. The shooting needs some work, but the defense is going to be there right now. Can rebound the ball, can score a little bit, and I like the defensive aspect she would bring to a polished team like the Liberty. The Liberty are drafting from a position of strength here. We're in the WNBA Finals last season. They have some really good players, Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, another former MVP as well, I'm blanking, but the Liberty are very talented, so bringing in defense to an offensive specialist team, I think, makes a lot of sense. And then we'll get into the last pick of the first round, which is number 12, the Atlanta Dream, taking forward Alyssa Pilley out of Utah. Was dominant, was very, very impressive this season. You could say she should be much higher. Spent her first 3 years at USC, wasn't a star, then transferred to Utah for her last 2 seasons and completely reinvented her game, and she was so good. She's big, she's strong, she can get through defenders, but can also space the ball. 40% from 3, 55% from the field, is scoring 27 points per 36, which I think is the best that we've mentioned outside of Caitlin Clark. Is just a really gifted scorer in multiple different ways. 8.3 rebounds as well, 3 assists. Has just transformed into a very well-rounded player, and the Atlanta Dream, no matter what, if you think it's a fit, this is easily the best talent on the board. Could go top 6 or 7. So getting her here at 12 makes a ton of sense for Atlanta, and you should be really happy with a player that maybe could be a star for you because of the level of scoring and the different ways that she can do it. Has completely transformed her game at Utah, and it's really impressive to see because probably people didn't expect it to happen. But that is the whole first round. There are only 12 teams in the WNBA. I think they should expand. A lot of picks end up not even making the teams they're drafted to because there just aren't enough teams in the league. There's a lot of talent coming into the women's game now. Please add at least a couple of teams. So players like Kate Martin, who is one of the most fun players in the Final Four, hitting huge shots down the stretch of their win against LSU, as well as against UConn, and LSU. She was good at the end of both games, but also was pretty solid against South Carolina as well. She deserves to be in the WNBA, but right now, because the talent pool is so tight with the amount of teams they have, she might not make it, and I think that's unfortunate. Nika Mule, another player who probably will get drafted out of UConn, a very physical defender, a player that I really like. I thought did a really good job on Caitlin Clark in the Final Four, but again, that's it for the first round. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree. But Caitlin Clark is heading to the WNBA, and that's the biggest thing here, is going to transform the Fever into a very good team in year 1, I believe. Her and Aliyah Boston are going to be special together. But again, a lot of good players in this draft class. Kamilla Cardoso, Cameron Brink, and Rickea Jackson would all probably be number 1 picks in other recent drafts, so it's really talented. It reminds me a lot of the recent NBA draft where they had Wembanyama at 1 is a special prospect, just like Clark at number 1 is a special prospect. And then players like Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller, who many people agreed would be number 1 overall picks in a lot of drafts. So to get that again here in the WNBA, I think it shows all the talent coming in, how impressive it's going to be, and I'm super excited. We'll probably do another mock right before the draft next week, so hopefully you enjoy. Let me know your thoughts down below. Think about subscribing. I'm on the road to 14,000 subscribers. I've talked a lot about the WNBA and the NCAA women's tournament over the past couple weeks, so if you enjoy women's basketball, think about subscribing. I'm going to get it back into the NBA more as we approach the playoffs, but I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Peace.